Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my homeowner association fined me over $4,000 for having a supposedly illegal Christian Christmas decoration on my property right in my front yard. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. About a year and a half ago, I was putting up Christmas decorations like I always do with my family, only this year we were trying to instill into our kids the more religious aspects of the holidays. That while gifts are nice, it can also be good to think about the more religious and spiritual side of things. That came out in our decoration too, when we put a cross out on our lawn right next to a manger display. We figured that it would be fine, but it did not take long before we started to have problems with our HOA. They sent us a letter telling us that some of our Christmas decorations were not board approved and needed to be removed or we would get a fine. They of course did not tell us what they wanted removed, thinking that we could just read their minds or something. I called to see what the issue was and I was shocked to find out that it was the cross. They claimed that it was inappropriate and not a Christmas decoration. The manger was fine, no problem displaying the baby Jesus. The cross though, that symbolized the entire religion, that was no good and clearly had to be removed. Now this is not important, but I just find it hilarious. I asked them if it wasn't appropriate decorations for Christmas to then tell me what holiday it was good for. They told me that the only holiday I could put a cross up outside was for Passover. Now, I admit I don't know much about Jewish holidays except for TV specials, but the idea of them putting out big old crosses for it makes me laugh every single time. If you think that I was gonna take it down because the HOA was telling me to, then you would be wrong. I looked in their bylaws and there was no master list of what was and was not a Christmas decoration. They simply wanted the cross taken down for some reason and would say anything they wanted to make it happen. I called their bluff, and when they started to send me fines in the mail, I simply ignored them. They added up to about $4,000 in total, and then 2 days before Christmas they did something worse than the Grinch himself ever could. My HOA years and years back got permission to force homeowners into enrolling in kind of an auto-pay system. Some of you might pay bills that way or streaming subscriptions. They just take it out the fee every month from the bank account you registered with. What I didn't know they could do was go into the system and simply take out $4,000 from my bank account. I saw the money gone and where it went on my bank statement and was furious. The worst part was I could not do anything at the time since it was now Christmas Eve. I could not get anybody on the phone from the bank, the HOA, a lawyer, just nothing. They just drained most of my bank account and I had bills to pay at the start of the month I now could not afford. Talk about a lousy Christmas surprise. It was not until after the new year that I was able to get a lawyer and the paperwork rolling in order to sue the HOA for both giving me all those fines in the first place and then just taking out the money without any type of permission. That was theft in my book and the lawyer agreed with me. They misused the system and stole. There was good news and bad news though when it came to filing a lawsuit against them. They showed me some fine print crap showing that they were able to take out any unpaid dues or fines before the new year, even if that meant not giving me any time or warning. It was a piece of the autopay system that nobody knew about. As messed up as it was, there was no criminal activity to what they did. The good news was I had every right to take them to civil court because they had no reason to fine me all of that money in the first place. I wanted every single penny back, plus reparations for not having it for 3 months at this point, plus I was being extra petty and wanted a written apology from them. They were dumb enough to try and fight this and weasel their way out of needing to give me any of my own money back. I really think they wanted to just drag it out for as long as possible because they are just those horrible type of people. They were going to argue in court that my decoration was against HOA laws and the fines should stick. Instead of pulling out a list of approved decorations that their original messages led me to believe existed, they did something else. They went into a different section and started to argue that me putting a cross out was going against a bylaw that stated, "No resident shall push a religious agenda or faith on another resident." This rule was really to stop people going door to door trying to get people to join their religion. She was claiming that was what my cross was doing, which is not true at all. I was not telling people to convert or that it was the only religion allowed. I argued that it is a Christmas decoration especially, placed next to the manger, showing the beginning and end of the man the entire holiday is based on. If they wanted to ban my cross, shouldn't they also ban the manger? And at that point, anything related to Santa as well? And when I say I argued this, I really mean my lawyer, because I admit I'm not smart enough to come up with that kind of comeback argument off the top of my head. I would have stood there confused for a good 20 minutes saying, After hearing both sides, the court agreed there was no basis for the fines and they had to return the money to me. Not only that though, but also pay my court fees, their own lawyer and other reparations to me. Sadly, a judge cannot really force somebody to apologize. I never really expected that to be able to happen. It was more of a pipe dream kind of thing. I did one more thing though that hurt the HOA in the long run. I spread the news of what the HOA can do with the autopay system via word of mouth, the internet and even a newsletter. I wanted people to know that the HOA had abilities to simply take money from their bank account seemingly at any time, urging people to opt out and telling them that legally they were allowed to switch to getting mailed bills every month instead. It might sound like a small thing, but the impact was huge. People that once were fine with the HOA were suddenly pissed off and felt like they were a greedy corporation going behind people's backs. I also heard that they ended up losing out on more money because now people were fighting fines and the HOA could not do anything except spend more money trying to sue people. It ended with more money in the pockets of the people and less going to the HOA people who were just trying to scam and take advantage of us. As for my cross, it's already up for this year and I've not heard a peep from the HOA about it again. Or anybody else thinking that it was a problem to even exist. The HOAs need to stay out of people's personal lives and only focus on their actual roles. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. HOA sued me for my drought-tolerant yard. I destroyed them in court. I'm just going to start this whole thing off with a disclaimer that I really need to make sure the next place I live in does not have an HOA. I know that everyone here has probably heard that at least once before, but seriously, we need to get rid of these things. I'm sure there are some stories of an HOA doing something good, but from everything I gather, we would probably be better off as a society without them. Though then, you would not be enjoying the story of how I destroyed them in court, so I guess it is a mixed bag. I live in a pretty hot climate, so especially during the warmest months we end up with a drought. Anyone familiar with that knows that one thing that gets limited during this time is the ability to water our grass. I honestly get sick of wasting water on my lawn that usually will end up not getting the amount it needs and half dying anyway. So I do some research into drought-resistant plants and decide that instead of grass I'm going to fill my yard with them. I know that something this major will need approval though, so I fill out an HOA form and wait a month. I expect to get a rejection and to move on from my good plan. They did not answer though, and the rules state that no answer within 30 days is basically equal to an approval for that kind of request form. It was specifically for changes to the land like large landscaping projects. I moved forward and started working on my new yard, and then suddenly the HOA was interested. First they stopped all the work, stating that I never asked for permission. I had to have a meeting where I showed them that I submitted a form and it did not get any response, so that meant it was approved. So they decided to tell me that I needed to fill out another completely different form that would prove the things I would be planting would be actually drought resistant. Basically, they wanted me to ask for approval for every type of plant to waste my time and in the meanwhile stop me from fixing my yard. The grass was gone at this point, so it was in that mid-project mess. The funny part is though that I am sure their plan was to reject any of the plants that I wanted to do, I guess indirectly bullying me into putting grass back on my yard instead. 30 days went by again though with no response, so that was automatic approval to keep moving forward with the project. Basically, not to bore you with details, they kept trying to find loopholes that would make me fill out more forms and have more meetings with them about my yard and what I was doing. Eventually though, it did get done, and honestly I think that it looked nice. If you're curious as to what a drought-tolerant yard is, I would recommend googling pictures of it. Honestly, if you live in an area with a drought, I would recommend it, but anyway, back to the point was that I thought all the problems with the HOA would be over once my yard was fully done. They seem to have one more trick up their sleeves. In the HOA rules it says that the area between the sidewalk and the street in front of my property is also my responsibility. I don't know if that area has a special name, but basically after my yard is a sidewalk and then some more yard and then the street. So I ended up replacing that area as well. They thought they finally had me for some reason on this one, and instead of holding another meeting, which would clearly make too much sense for them, they decided to just flat out sue me. Keep in mind that by now I had been getting harassed and delayed by them for months. I was totally sick of these people, and now they were trying to drag me to court for what I was doing. Please keep in mind that literally all I was doing was redoing my front yard. In a way that actually is better for the environment and for the town as a whole, because one less house using sprinklers to water the lawn during a drought means less strain on the water supply. I got a lawyer who was pretty confident that we were going to win, while they had their HOA lawyer that I cannot say for sure, but might have been lied to. That seems like a stretch, but he looked pretty confused the entire time, like he either was not given the whole story or was not told about the case until that day. Very different from the usual confident look of a lawyer in a courtroom. Anyway, they give their side and point out the rules states that I'm supposed to maintain that area between the sidewalk and the street. By getting rid of the grass though, they are claiming I defaced it and I cannot change that part of the ground without specific permission, which I didn't get. I sit and wait for them to finish before my lawyer speaks up about the specifics of those HOA rules they kept mentioning. Do you remember that first form I filled out when this entire thing started and the whole thing was just an idea? It turns out that form also covered that area as an extension of my yard, since it was my job to maintain it. That led into a whole argument about what maintaining meant, and basically ended up with it meaning as long as I was caring for it appropriately. They tried to argue that I was not allowed to remove the grass from that spot, but the judge agreed that the maintaining had no clause about it needing to be grass. I could replace it with an appropriate drought-tolerant plant as long as I kept it maintained and, most importantly, not a danger to anyone on the street or the sidewalk. Basically 20 minutes of them rambling, and they got shut down by my lawyer in about 5 minutes. They were forced to leave me alone about my yard, and if they sent me anything official HOA-wise in the mail that was arguing the court decision, I could sue them for harassment. I got left alone after that, and my yard ended up being a big conversation piece. It was the first one in the area, and a lot of the neighbors were interested in how I got started and what kind of plants I used. I still think the best part was that now anyone who wanted to copy my yard idea could. Once one house in the neighborhood was approved for specific yard work, they are not allowed to exclude anyone else. It would open them up to all kinds of lawsuits, so not only did I get to make my lawn drought-tolerant, I opened a floodgate of other people interested. I still stand by what I said at the beginning of the story though about wanting to get away from the HOA. Even though I won in the end, it still took months longer than it should have to make a change to my own property. I just want to be able to use my land how I want it without getting the approval of a bunch of other people. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you still enjoy the stories about crazy HOAs and awful neighbors, then please don't forget to like the video in case you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance, your support is very much appreciated. The next one is titled Worst Trash Neighbors Ever. For context, I moved into my current apartment 4 years ago. It is a brand new pet-friendly 3-story building with 1 tenant per floor. Me and my wife moved into the basements, and on the same day another young couple, mid-20 to early 30s, moved into the one just above. I did not know at the time that they would end up being the worst neighbors I ever had. It all started only a few days after we moved in. At first we noticed that their 2 dogs barked a lot and often for hours non-stop. And for your information, the apartments are sound isolated, so much so that when the guy plays loud music I can only hear it if both of our windows are open. After a couple of months I started to realize that they never took their trash bin on the side of the road. It was always the other neighbors, my wife or me, that would do it for them. So I decided to stop doing them the favor, and it just led to them piling some garbage bags outside of the filled bin and leaving it there for another 2 weeks. And when the raccoons would go through their garbage bags, they would not even clean them up. I've had to do it for them because otherwise the wind would bring all the trash on my balcony. Then came winter. I am from Canada, so of course it comes with a lot of snow to shovel. My neighbors do own a shovel, but it is mostly for decoration. So every winter the other friendly neighbor and me split the task of shoveling the stairs that they share, the path to the sheds and around the recycling and garbage bin, so they would not be stuck in ice. In the meantime, the neighbors from hell did not even bother to remove the snow from their own parking lot, which leads to their car sitting on top of a 10-inch bump of slippery compacted snow. On multiple occasions, their car slipped down from that hill and almost crashed into my wife's car. Then over the years, one of their demon dogs was unleashed and ran down my stairs, tore through my back door screen and bit my dog on the snout pretty badly. Almost every day there are some shady guys that come to the apartment and leave with little packages, and one time I could not leave the house because the building was surrounded by over 15 police officers to arrest them. However, then a perfect opportunity for revenge appended. One day noticed the recycling truck worker looking into their recycling bin, and instead of picking it up, he just left it there. I got curious, and when I went to pick up my own bin, theirs was full of styrofoam, which is rejected by my city. So every time they bring the bin on the other side of the road, I go after them and make sure to leave some styrofoam sticking out. It has been 2 months now and they are drowning in trash and cardboard. They don't put extra garbage near the bin anymore because of multiple complaints from me and some neighbors from the other blocks. Every time they come to grab their bin, they are dumbfounded to see that it is still full. The other day I even saw the guy loading his car with trash to probably dump it into a bin somewhere else. I spent enough time dealing with their BS, so now they get to live with their own. And the next one is titled Best Malicious Compliance Ever. Recently, I moved in a new apartment with my roommate. When we first came in, the biggest part of the sale was the fact that the apartment was freshly renovated and soundproof. This one is important and you will see why. So, when we got in, my roommate immediately fell in love with it and I was too. When we moved in, we were very careful not to bother anyone as we wanted to quickly have a good relationship with our neighbors. Oh, did you see the new neighbors? They only move during the day. They don't make sounds during the night. What nice people, kind of deal. And we can safely say it worked. What we did not know, however, is that we were only 3 renters when we first came in, us on the floor, another family upstairs on the opposite side, and another one on the 3rd floor with one empty apartment between us. Turns out the soundproof statement was accurate, but only in regards to the inside to outside situation. When our upstairs neighbors moved in, it was a damn nightmare. Sound from 5 AM to past midnight, 5 days in a row, dropping stuff, speaking loudly, yelling or walking in their apartment with shoes on. Out of frustration on the 5th day, I walk upstairs and meet my neighbor. At midnight, I ask them to cease their activities for the night. I have work in the morning and I cannot be kept up all night. I understand that they were freshly moved in and they might have had a tight schedule, but midnight was too late to be moving stuff. He did not reply, however, and closed the door on me. I go downstairs and the sound starts over again. I notify my landlord and he tells me he will handle it and apologized for the situation, explaining to me that my neighbor was just moving and that he probably did not understand what I was saying because of the language barrier. The neighbors were extremely loud. I know a lot of Karens will use that as an excuse to shower their neighbors with hate, but when I say loud, I mean it. There was no stop to their loud noises. It seemed like they could not be bothered to hold something without dropping it, or jumping up and down on the floor, or purposefully banging the bed frame against the wall when having fun. I recorded the event and even installed microphones in my home jack to my computer, activating and recording every time there's strong vibration in the house. Over 98 events on a Monday, February 14th, I was livid. I sent that to the landlord and explained this cannot continue. First, the apartment was poorly soundproofed, which meant we were hearing every damn sound at all times. Second, we had notified the neighbors about the situation and they have ignored it. I have notified the landlord to awaken them to our situation. I report the issue several times and even advise my landlord that there were heavy sounding thuds coming from upstairs, which worried me. He answered with, "Stop complaining about your neighbors already, I have other things to do." I answered, "Understood, sir, but please be advised this will be my last communication and action to help you in that regard." You know, when I said I heard loud bangs, it turns out our upstairs neighbor was doing bench press lifting in his living room and the heavy thuds I kept hearing was him dropping his weights on the ground. I had warned my roommate about removing anything she did not want broken from the living room, and lo and behold, 4 days later, the first crack appeared. Then another, the floor was giving up. I moved the couch out of the way and moved the TV and the consoles into the bedroom. Fast forward to 3 days ago, after another series of loud bangs, I heard a loud crack followed by a "oh damn," followed by very loud noises. I went to the living room to see my neighbor on the ground with several actually gruesome injuries due to the fact that he just went through the floor and brought his bench and weight rack with him. So then I called an ambulance and the police. The police asked me if I reported the issue with my landlord, which I could confirm due to my communications being made via email. I sent everything and I am now of course filing to break my lease due to uninhabitable dwelling. The landlord came in yesterday and just proceeded to explode. He told me I should have made him aware that my neighbor was doing dangerous things, to which I answered I had notified him about the very loud sounds and he never investigated. And that he also ordered me to stop complaining about my neighbors. It was not my responsibility to go out of my way to protect his assets if he is unwilling to cooperate with me. My neighbor's roommate and I are now residing in a hotel until we can find a new place to live. We are now also looking towards adding a bit more salt to the injury by maybe filing for criminal negligence against both our landlord and the neighbor. The first because the apartment was apparently having some flaws, and the latter for endangering us. Had I not caught up on what caused the sound earlier, me or, God forbid, my roommate could have been under that. Anyways, it was a fun week and I do enjoy the accommodations of my hotel. Never went to a 4-star spa included hotel before. Turns out the chocolate on the pillow is a lie and I'm very disappointed about that. Edit, as I have advised to a few commenters, I followed up with my roommate and she did not take pictures of the event. She got a bit mad that I asked, considering what just happened, and questioned my priorities. I then explained that our Reddit story got a lot of attention and some people in the comments requested some visual proof. I will spare you her answer. I'll just add that it is okay not to believe the story based on my word alone. If people actually didn't question it, I would be worried. When I posted this story, my only intent was to share my experience, and I thought, malicious compliance. Neat. If there was a horrible landlord/bad neighbor Reddit I would have found prior to submitting this story, probably would have went there instead. I'll also add that I'm not an expert or engineer. How and why something like weights and the like would cause part of the floor to collapse, I cannot say. Was there structural damage prior? Was there water damage that never was addressed, just covered up? Was the structure just not as sound as I believed it was when I got in? I can't say. I understand some of you might have worked in construction and never have experienced such an event, or have actual reasons to suspect a lie due to personal and professional experience. Once again, you can and should question anything on the internet. I just hope you also apply that kind of skepticism, and I mean wanting proof or the opinion of an actual expert prior to making a decision, to more than just Reddit posts. For those who made us laugh and those who have spoken to us, who have been encouraging and constructive, people who actually gave us advice, I thank you very much. It was very nice of everyone and I wish you the best. Update to the story: my brother has agreed to take the case and look at the options. We are not feeling very vindictive and our insurance are going to cover most of the costs, so we might file for negligence. I'm not a lawyer myself, I don't know the terms in English, but basically the landlord should have had his building inspected before renting, which was apparently not done. Landlord has apparently calmed down after the events and has apologized for everything. He has scheduled a visit from an inspector to check the integrity of the apartment and the cause of the damage that would have allowed a human and exercise equipment to go through the floor and ceiling. In exchange for not pressing charges, he has agreed to reimburse all the money we have invested into the rent, our stay at the hotel, and a little extra as an apology, and the guarantee to either repair the apartment and soundproof it properly, or if it is not an option, to go back, he will relocate us onto another of one of his buildings. Which, by the way, are a lot better than what we had, reduce our rent quite significantly for as long as we stay, with papers to back his offer up, and a full year of free rent. This is actually quite generous in the current rent market. I'm leaving the final say to my roommate. On my end, I was not injured, she was not, and this could have been just a freak accident. Yes, the landlord is a bit of an ass, but let's be honest, we all had worse, landlord-wise. Plus, even if we take him up on his offers, the upstairs neighbor might be looking for some severe reparation. He did get injured after all. However, we would be happy to hear about your opinion. What would you say? Take this further or just take the refund plus the full year, rent-free year, and then low rent for the years to come? And yeah, Ripe Stars, I did some further research in the case of this story, because actually officially there have been no further updates, and I came to find out that OP actually did not take it further, but instead just took the refund and the full year / rent-free year, which probably benefited him just as well. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.